My son's voice on the phone was cold when he said he needed my retirement money, and I felt my grip tighten on that old rotary phone cord we never bothered replacing. Just like that. No please, no explanation, just a demand wrapped up like it was already his to take. I'm 68 years old, and I've worked every single day since I was 16. Started at the local grocery store bagging groceries after school. Worked my way through 3 decades at the Postal Service. Retired with a modest pension and some savings I'd scraped together over the years. Not a fortune, mind you. Just enough to live comfortably in my small house. Maybe take a trip once a year. Help my grandkids with birthday presents. That money represented security, peace of mind, the freedom to not burden anyone in my old age. And here was my son, 43 years old, telling me he needed it, all of it. The morning light was coming through my kitchen window the way it always does, hitting that chip in the countertop I've been meaning to fix for 10 years. My coffee was getting cold in my favorite mug, the one with the faded flowers my late wife Martha picked out at a craft fair in 1987. Everything felt normal until that phone call. Everything felt safe. You know how quickly safety can disappear? 1 sentence. That's all it takes. Family betrayal doesn't announce itself with sirens and warnings. It walks right into your kitchen on a Tuesday morning and sits down at your table like it belongs there. Let me back up so you understand how we got here. My son Daniel is my only child. After Martha died 7 years ago from cancer, he was there, sort of. He called every few weeks, visited on holidays, kept in touch the way busy adult children do. He has 2 kids of his own, married to a woman named Rachel, who always seemed nice enough but kept her distance from me. I understood that. Not everyone clicks with their in-laws. I didn't take it personally. Daniel worked in finance, some kind of investment consulting that I never fully understood but seemed impressive. He wore expensive suits, drove a nice car, lived in one of those modern houses with too much glass and not enough character. I thought he was doing well. That's what he always told me. Business is good, Dad. Everything's great. Can't complain. The kind of phrases people use when they don't want to get into details. And I accepted that because I'm not the type of father who pries. I raised Daniel to be independent, to solve his own problems, to stand on his own 2 feet. Maybe I did too good a job at that. The phone call came after months of distance. He hadn't visited since Easter, hadn't called on my birthday in June, barely sent a text on Father's Day. When I tried reaching out, his responses were short. Busy with work, talk soon, the usual brush-offs. So when his name showed up on my caller ID that September morning, I was actually glad, relieved to hear from him. That relief lasted about 30 seconds. He didn't waste time with small talk, just launched right into it. Dad, I need to talk to you about something serious. I'm in financial trouble. I need access to your retirement savings. It's temporary, just until I get back on my feet. You understand, right? I stood there in my kitchen, that phone pressed to my ear, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach, the same feeling I'd had when the doctor called about Martha's test results. That knowing that everything's about to change. I asked him what kind of trouble, how much money, what happened, and his answers were vague, evasive, bad investments, market downturn, cash flow problems, words that didn't really explain anything but sounded official enough to be intimidating. Elder respect used to mean something in families. It used to mean children cared for their parents' well-being, protected their security in old age. Now I was being asked to sacrifice mine for reasons my son wouldn't fully explain. I told him I needed time to think about it. He didn't like that answer. His voice got harder, more insistent. This isn't optional, Dad. I need this. You're living comfortably on your pension anyway. You don't need all those savings just sitting there. What are you saving it for? You can't take it with you. That phrase stuck with me, you can't take it with you. Like I was being selfish for wanting to keep my own money, for wanting security in case I got sick, needed care, faced medical emergencies. Like planning for my own future was somehow wrong when he had immediate needs. The manipulation was subtle, but it was there, woven through every sentence. And the worst part? Part of me felt guilty. That's what they count on, isn't it? That programming we have as parents to sacrifice for our children, to put their needs first, to feel like we've failed if they're struggling. But little did I know what I'd discover when I started asking questions. After we hung up, I couldn't just sit there. My hands were shaking as I poured a fresh cup of coffee. I walked through my house, this place Martha and I bought in 1982, with a young family mortgage and big dreams. Every room held memories. Every piece of furniture had a story, and underlying all of it was the security of knowing I could afford to stay here, to age here, to die here without becoming a burden. Daniel was asking me to risk that. For what? Hidden family secrets about his financial situation that he wouldn't fully disclose? I did something I'd never done before. I called Rachel, his wife. We'd never been particularly close, but she'd always been polite to me. When she answered, her voice was surprised. "Oh, hi, Dad. Daniel's not here right now. I told her I knew, that I wanted to talk to her." There was a long pause. Then she sighed. "You're calling about the money, aren't you?" What she told me made my blood run cold. Daniel hadn't had a bad investment. He'd made a series of deliberate, reckless choices. He'd been gambling, not casually, not occasionally, regularly, seriously. Online poker, sports betting, even flying to casinos for weekend trips he'd hidden from everyone. He'd maxed out their credit cards, taken out loans against their house, emptied their kids' college funds. Rachel had only found out 6 months ago when creditors started calling. She'd been trying to get him into treatment, but he refused to admit he had a problem. And now, apparently, he'd decided that my retirement savings were his solution. Rachel was crying by the end of the conversation. "I'm so sorry you're being dragged into this. I told him not to ask you. I told him it wasn't right. But he's desperate, and desperate people don't think straight." She paused, then added something that cut deep. "He said you owed him anyway, that you'd always put work before family when he was growing up, that this was you making up for lost time." That accusation hit me like a punch. Had I worked too much when Daniel was young? Yes, I'd taken extra shifts, worked overtime, did everything I could to provide for my family. Martha and I both worked hard to give Daniel opportunities we never had. Was I perfect? No. Did I miss some little league games and school plays? Yes. But I'd been there for the important things. I'd been present. I'd been a father. And now that imperfect past was being weaponized to justify taking my financial security in my old age. I spent the next week in a fog of anger and disappointment and fear. Sleep didn't come easy. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, that same ceiling Martha and I painted together in 1995, and I'd wonder where I went wrong. How did I raise a son who thought it was acceptable to guilt-trip his elderly father into handing over life savings? How did the sweet kid who used to help me rake leaves and wash the car turn into this? But underneath the hurt, something else was brewing. A clarity, a determination. Because here's what Daniel didn't know. Here's what nobody knew except my lawyer and my accountant. The retirement savings he was demanding, that modest nest egg of about $80,000, wasn't actually my only asset. Not even close. Martha and I had been smart with money. We'd lived below our means, invested carefully over decades, bought stocks when we were young and let them grow. When Martha got sick, when we knew the end was coming, she'd helped me set up a trust, a substantial trust, almost $600,000 worth of assets, carefully structured and protected. We'd done it for 2 reasons. First, to protect the money from potential nursing home costs if I ended up needing long-term care. Second, and Martha had been very clear about this, to protect it from Daniel if he ever tried to manipulate or pressure me. You see, Martha had seen things in Daniel that I'd made excuses for over the years. The way he'd gotten angry when we wouldn't co-sign a car loan when he was 25. The way he'd stopped visiting as often after we wouldn't give him money for a business venture that seemed sketchy. The way he'd react with coldness when we set boundaries around money. Martha had said to me more than once that Daniel had a sense of entitlement about our resources, that he saw them as his future inheritance, and resented any decisions we made that he thought diminished his eventual payout. I hadn't wanted to believe her. What parent wants to believe their child is counting down the days until they can inherit? But Martha was wise about people in ways I wasn't. So when she suggested the trust, suggested keeping it quiet, suggested letting people think the retirement savings were all we had, I'd agreed. For her peace of mind, for my protection. And now, 7 years after her death, her wisdom was about to prove invaluable. Daniel called again and again, each time more insistent, each time with new angles. "Think of your grandkids, Dad. Don't you want to help them? I'll pay you back, I promise. This is temporary. You're being selfish." That last one made me angry. in a way I hadn't felt in years. I'm selfish for wanting to keep my own money. I'm selfish for not bankrolling your gambling addiction. I hadn't confronted him about the gambling yet. I was waiting, gathering information, talking to my lawyer about what needed to happen next. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about my son's life spiraling out of control and me needing to make a decision about how to handle it. Enable him by giving in, or enforce a boundary that might finally force him to get help. The breaking point came 3 weeks after that first phone call. Daniel showed up at my house unannounced. Just walked right in, didn't knock, didn't call ahead. He found me in the garage, organizing tools, and his face was red with anger. Why are you making this so difficult? I need an answer. I need that money. I'm your son. You owe me this. I put down the wrench I was holding and looked at him. Really looked at him. His expensive suit was rumpled. His eyes were bloodshot. His hands were shaking. This was my boy. The child Martha and I had brought into the world with so much love and hope. And he was standing in my garage making demands like a stranger. Like I was an ATM instead of his father. I said very calmly, I know about the gambling, Daniel. Rachel told me everything. The color drained from his face. Then it came back, red and furious. She had no right. This is none of your business. I'm handling it. Just give me the money and I'll handle everything. His voice was rising, getting desperate. I shook my head. I'm not giving you my retirement savings to feed a gambling addiction. That's not help, Daniel. That's enabling. You need treatment. You need to face what you've done to your family and get actual help. He started yelling then. Called me selfish, called me a bad father, said I'd never been there for him, and now when he needed me most, I was turning my back. The words were designed to hurt, designed to manipulate, and they did hurt, but they didn't change my mind. I stood there and let him rage, let him get it all out, and then I said something I'd been preparing to say for weeks. I'm not giving you my retirement savings, but I am going to help you whether you want it or not. I've spoken to a treatment center that specializes in gambling addiction. I've paid for a 30-day residential program. The spot is waiting for you. If you go, if you complete the program, if you actually commit to getting better, then we can talk about what kind of support I can offer, but not before, not $1 before you get help. Daniel's face went through a series of expressions, shock, anger, something that might have been fear. Then he sneered. You think you can control me with money? I'm not a child anymore, Dad. You can't force me into rehab like I'm a teenager. I'll get the money somewhere else. I don't need you. I felt my heart break a little at that, but I kept my voice steady. Maybe you will find the money somewhere else. Maybe you'll dig yourself deeper into debt and ruin your life completely. I can't stop you from making bad choices, Daniel, but I can stop you from using my resources to make them. Your mother saw this coming, you know. She knew there might come a day when we'd have to protect ourselves from you. That stopped him cold. What are you talking about? This is when I revealed the truth, the hidden family secret that Martha and I had kept protected all these years. I walked into my house, Daniel following, and I pulled out the trust documents from my file cabinet, the thick folder I'd kept locked away, updated regularly with my lawyer but never discussed with anyone outside of necessary professionals. I laid it on my kitchen table and looked at my son. I said, your mother and I established a trust years ago, almost $600,000 in carefully protected assets. The retirement savings you've been demanding, that's not everything I have. That's not even close. We kept it separate specifically to protect it from situations like this, from manipulation, from pressure, from family members who might see us as a source of money, rather than people deserving respect and security. Daniel's eyes went wide as he looked at the documents. His hands reached for them, but I pulled them back. This money is untouchable, I continued. It's structured to provide for my care as I age, to ensure I never become a burden to anyone. And when I die, it goes to your children, not to you, directly to your kids, in trust for their education and future, with provisions that you cannot access it, cannot borrow against it, cannot gamble it away. The silence in that kitchen was deafening. Daniel just stared at me, mouth open, processing what I'd said. Finally, he found his voice. You've been hiding money from me for years. I shook my head. I haven't been hiding anything. This money was never yours. It was never going to be yours. It's mine, earned from my labor, saved from my sacrifice, protected for my future. The fact that you feel entitled to it, The fact that you're angry I didn't tell you about it. That proves exactly why your mother insisted we keep it separate." He started arguing then, but there was less fire in it, more desperation. "That's not fair. I'm your only child. I should inherit everything. You can't just give it all to my kids and cut me out." But even as he said it, I could see the realization creeping in. He'd counted on my retirement savings being his backup plan, his safety net, and now that net was gone. I told him the same thing I'd said before. Treatment program, 30 days, get help, that's the offer. Take it or leave it, but nothing else is on the table. He left angry, slammed my door hard enough that it rattled the frame. I stood there in my kitchen, hands shaking from adrenaline, and I felt a mixture of emotions I couldn't quite name. Grief for the relationship we'd had, relief that I'd stood my ground, fear about what would come next, pride that Martha and I had planned for exactly this scenario. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. I half expected Daniel to show up again to try a different approach, but he didn't. Instead, I got a call from Rachel. She was crying, but they were different tears this time, grateful tears. Daniel had told her about the confrontation, about the trust fund, about everything, and something in him had broken, not in a bad way, in a necessary way. He'd realized the severity of his situation, the fact that he'd been willing to destroy his father's security to feed an addiction, the fact that he'd lost access to an inheritance he'd been counting on. The rock bottom he'd been avoiding had finally arrived. Rachel said, "He wants to talk to you about the treatment program. He's not ready to admit he needs it, but he's scared enough to consider it. That's progress, right?" It was progress. Small, tentative, fragile progress, but it was something. We met the next day, Daniel and I, at a neutral location, a park near my house where I used to take him as a kid. He looked terrible, hadn't slept, obviously been crying. We sat on a bench, the same bench we'd sat on 30 years ago after Little League games, and we had the most honest conversation we'd had in decades. He apologized. Not perfectly, not completely, but genuinely. Said he'd let the gambling consume him, let his sense of entitlement poison his relationships, let his addiction convince him that taking from his father was justified. He didn't fully understand it yet, didn't have all the insights that would come with treatment and therapy, but he knew he'd crossed a line. He knew he'd damaged something precious. I told him I loved him, that I'd always love him. But that love didn't mean I'd enable his self-destruction. The treatment program was still available. The offer still stood, and if he chose to go, if he chose to actually work on himself, then we could rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. He went, not enthusiastically, not with full acceptance of his problem, but he went, checked himself into that 30-day residential program, and I paid for it from my retirement savings. The money he'd been demanding I give him outright. Funny how the same money could be used for destruction or healing depending on the conditions attached to it. Those 30 days were hard for everyone. Rachel and the kids were processing the betrayal and chaos Daniel had created. I was processing my own feelings about my son, about the choices I'd made as a father, about whether I could have prevented this somehow. The guilt was heavy some days. The doubt was persistent. But underneath it all was a foundation of certainty. I'd done the right thing, setting that boundary, enforcing that consequence, refusing to enable. Those were acts of love even when they felt like punishment. Daniel came out of treatment different, not fixed. Addiction doesn't work like that, but changed, more honest, more vulnerable. He'd started attending meetings, seeing a therapist, facing the financial wreckage he'd created. He got a second job to start paying off debts. He let Rachel take control of their finances. He began the slow, painful work of rebuilding trust with his family. Our relationship changed too. It had to. The easy assumption that he could lean on me financially was gone. The unspoken expectation of inheritance was shattered. But in place of that, something more honest emerged. We talked more openly. He shared his struggles instead of hiding them. I offered support, emotional support, sometimes practical help, but always with clear boundaries. I paid for his therapy sessions for 6 months. I helped Rachel and the kids occasionally when they needed something for school or emergencies, but it was never an open checkbook, never unconditional access to my resources. About a year after that confrontation in my kitchen, Daniel asked if we could talk about the trust fund. He'd been doing well in his recovery, working his program, staying clean from gambling. He said, "I understand why you structured it the way you did. I understand why Mom insisted on it, and I want you to know I don't resent it anymore. Actually, I'm grateful. If that money had been easily accessible, I would have destroyed it along with everything else. You protected my kid's future from me. That's hard to accept, but it's true. That conversation meant more to me than any apology. It meant he was gaining insight, understanding, self-awareness, the things that would actually help him stay in recovery long-term. We talked about the trust that day, about Martha's wisdom in setting it up, about how she'd known what I couldn't see. And Daniel said something that made me cry. He said, I wish I could thank her. I wish I could tell her she was right and that I'm sorry for being the kind of son she had to protect you from. These days, Daniel and I have dinner once a month, sometimes at my house, sometimes at theirs. The grandkids are doing well, and knowing there's money set aside for their education gives everyone peace of mind. Daniel's been in recovery for almost 2 years now. He still attends meetings, still sees his therapist, still works hard to manage his addiction one day at a time. We have a relationship based on honesty now instead of obligation. It's not the relationship I imagined when he was a little boy, but it's real. The trust fund remains untouched, exactly as Martha and I designed it. My retirement savings are intact, protected from that crisis by firm boundaries and prepared planning. I'm still living in my house, still drinking coffee from that faded flower mug, still finding peace in my routines and my independence. The security Martha and I worked so hard to create is still secure, and that security allows me to help my family in ways that are actually helpful rather than enabling. I think about Martha often, especially when I'm making decisions about money and family. She was wiser than I gave her credit for when she was alive. She understood that true care for the people we love sometimes means protecting them from their worst impulses by protecting ourselves first. She understood that inheritance drama could destroy families if not handled carefully. She understood that elder respect isn't just about children honoring parents, but about parents respecting themselves enough to set boundaries. The lesson I've learned through all of this isn't complicated, but it's profound. Financial boundaries aren't cruel, they're protective. Saying no to manipulation isn't abandonment. It's love tough enough to survive difficult truths. And securing your own future isn't selfish, it's essential. When we sacrifice our security to enable someone else's dysfunction, we don't help them. We just ensure that when they fall, they take us down with them. I'm grateful for the trust fund Martha insisted we create. Not because of the money itself, but because of what it represented. Foresight, self-respect, understanding that we owed ourselves security in our old age just as much as we owed our child love and support. The trust wasn't about hiding assets or being secretive. It was about creating protection for ourselves and for future generations from the chaos of the present. Daniel tells people in his recovery meetings about that day. I showed him the trust documents. He says it was the wake-up call he needed, the moment he realized his father wasn't a resource to be exploited, but a person to be respected. He says that losing access to that money, understanding it was forever out of his reach, was one of the best things that ever happened to him. It forced him to face his addiction instead of looking for external solutions. In the end, I learned that protecting yourself isn't the same as abandoning someone you love. It's often the only way to truly help them. Have you ever had to choose between helping someone and enabling them? And where did you draw that line?